I'm just doing this for my family and, just standing up for my dad.
That's Karl Malone's son, defending his father. And the reason he's doing that right now is because this story isn't going away anymore. For decades, it stayed in the shadows. People whispered about it, avoided it, ignored it. But today, it's louder than ever. Social media is bringing it back. Podcasts are exposing it. And a new generation of fans is asking one simple question: how did this ever get ignored? Because what you're about to hear isn't just a controversy, it's a story about fame, power, silence, and a past that never really disappeared. And trust me, once you understand what really happened, you won't look at this legacy the same way again. Let me break it down. Karl Malone is one of the greatest players in basketball history, a legend, an icon, a Hall of Famer. For nearly 2 decades, he dominated the NBA with strength, consistency, and relentless performance. He built a career that most players can only dream of. MVP awards, all-star appearances, historic records. On the court, everything looked perfect, but off the court, there was a story that never truly went away. A story that began all the way back in 1983. At that time, Malone was just 20 years old, a college athlete at Louisiana Tech, strong, focused, and already showing signs of greatness. That summer, he returned to his hometown in Louisiana, a place where everyone knew each other, and that's where everything changed, because that's when he became involved with a 13-year-old girl named Gloria Bell. She wasn't a stranger. She was someone from the same community, a child, and what happened next would follow his name forever. Gloria Bell became pregnant. Let that sink in. A 13-year-old girl and a 20-year-old man. This wasn't a rumor. This wasn't speculation. This wasn't unclear. A child was born in 1984, a son. And later, a paternity test confirmed that Karl Malone was the father. There was no confusion about what happened, so the question becomes, why didn't anything happen legally? Why were there no criminal charges? Why did a situation this serious simply pass without consequences? The answer is complicated. Gloria Bell's family chose not to pursue criminal charges at the time. Reports suggest they wanted to protect her from public exposure, from media attention, from the trauma of going through a court case, and decisions like that, especially back then, often came from fear, pressure, and lack of resources. But that decision had a lasting impact because once time passed, the legal window closed, and Karl Malone moved forward with his life. Just 2 years later, everything changed for him. In 1985, he entered the NBA draft. He was selected by the Utah Jazz, and suddenly, the same man connected to that past became a rising star. Money came in, fame came in, recognition came in, and the story from 1983 stayed quiet, almost like it never happened. In 1986, Gloria Bell's family filed a civil case. The court confirmed paternity again. Malone was ordered to pay child support, $125 per week, at a time when he was earning hundreds of thousands of dollars as an NBA player. And even then, that amount was reportedly challenged. Eventually, a private settlement was reached, details were sealed, and life moved on, at least publicly. Over the next 20 years, Karl Malone built a legendary career. He became one of the highest scorers in NBA history. He played in multiple finals, won MVP awards, and secured his place among the all-time greats. Fans cheered him, the league celebrated him, and the system stayed silent. But here's the thing about stories like this. They don't disappear, they wait, and eventually they come back. Years later, something unexpected happened. A podcast clip went viral. An NBA player hearing about this situation for the first time reacted live on camera. You could see the moment it hit him. Confusion, shock, silence. That kind of silence, where someone is trying to process something they didn't expect to hear. And that moment sparked something bigger because suddenly more people started asking questions. More people started looking into the past. And the internet did what it always does. It remembered. Now the conversation wasn't just about basketball anymore. It wasn't about stats, records, or awards. It became about accountability, about whether success should overshadow serious actions, about whether the system failed, and about why this story was never widely discussed for so long. Even within the basketball world, reactions started to shift. Fans, analysts, and younger players began speaking out. Social media amplified everything. And once that momentum starts, it doesn't slow down because people aren't just looking at what happened, they're asking why nothing happened after. At the same time, there's another side to this story, a complicated one, the family, the children, because they didn't choose any of this. They were born into it. And for them, this isn't just a headline, it's personal. Karl Malone's son, KJ Malone, publicly defended his father, not with legal arguments, not with denial, but with something much more human. He spoke as a son. Someone who grew up with a father present in his life, someone who experienced a different version of the man the public talks about. And that's where this story becomes even more complex. Because two things can exist at the same time. A person can be one thing in one part of life and something very different in another. That doesn't erase anything, but it makes the conversation harder, more uncomfortable, more real. Today, Karl Malone lives a relatively quiet life. He's involved in business. He stays mostly out of the spotlight. And in many ways, it seems like everything moved on. But the conversation didn't, because the internet doesn't forget. And every time this story resurfaces, it reaches a new audience. People who had never heard it before, people who are hearing it for the first time, just like that podcast moment. And that's why this story still matters. Not because it's new, but because it was never fully addressed. So now we're left with a bigger question. What defines a legacy? Is it achievements, records, awards, or is it everything, including the parts people try to ignore? Because at the end of the day, this isn't just about one person. It's about how systems respond, how stories are told, and what happens when uncomfortable truths finally reach the surface. And now I want to ask you, after hearing all of this, how do you see it? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more deep stories like this, click the next video on your screen.